Presented by Aditya Birla Capital. Co-presented by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist. Co-presented by JK Pancharghat Tire. Ab hawa nahi niklegi. In association with Neom, the line new wonders for the world.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, Friday night. This is your destination for all the news, newsmakers, talking points ahead of the weekend. The big talking point tonight, guess what? The Cheetah has come to India. That's right, cover story of India Today magazine this week. Also our big story today, history being made, or is this another big blunder when it comes to wildlife conservation? We'll have a special on that. Also, Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin in a one-on-one. The Prime Minister tells the Russian President, this is not the era of war. What's the big message on the other side? But first, as always, it's time for the 9 headlines at 9. 8 cheetahs are on their way to India from Namibia in a historical intercontinental translocation of the world's fastest animal. Prime Minister Modi to release the big cats in MP's Kuna National Park on his birthday tomorrow. War not an option, Modi tells Putin in a face-to-face dialogue at the SCO summit. Avoids any bilaterals with the Chinese or the Pakistanis, even though the two leaders are in the same room. Vegetable vendor in Kollam, Kerala claims he was thrashed for not paying 2,000 rupees for the Congress's Bharat Jodo Yatra. The party suspends 3 youth workers, claims the vendor belongs to a left party. Big showdown over Hyderabad ahead of Hyderabad Liberation Day. The BJP plans celebrations. AIMIM takes out a Tiranga rally. OAC calls it Liberation Day, a day to celebrate integration with India. Delhi's anti-corruption branch raids and arrests AAP MLA Amanatullah Khan. Beretta pistol, cartridges, 12 lakh cash recovered from the MLA's aides. Ex-Punjab Chief Minister Amrinder Singh to merge his Punjab Lok Congress with the BJP. Final decision on the merger to be announced on Monday. BJP makes a gold ring promise. Union Minister L. Murugan says all children born at a hospital in Chennai to be gifted a gold ring worth 5,000 rupees each to mark the Prime Minister's birthday. And billionaire tycoon Gautam Adani briefly becomes the world's second richest man on the Forbes list. He completes the Ambuja cement acquisition today. And Ajay Devgan's star, thank God, faces a boycott call over mocking Hindu religion and its deities allegedly.
ये है YD. Yum.
But the big breaking news that's coming in, the historic intercontinental translocation of the Cheetahs. The big cat has begun. 8 cheetahs are on their way to India from Namibia, where they left a short while ago, undertaking a 10-hour-long journey. The big cats will land in Gwalior early Saturday morning, will be flown in Indian Air Force Chinook helicopters to the Kuna National Park in Madhya Pradesh, where they will be released into the wild by the Prime Minister on his birthday. Remember, this is a one-of-its-kind intercontinental translocation of the cheetah. The first time from Africa to India, the cheetah is on its way. Joining me now is Nripesh Sioni. He's live from Windhoek in Namibia, where the cheetahs left a short while ago. Nripesh, excitement. Tell us what happened. How are the cheetahs being transported? Give us some details.
It was very exciting. It was very exciting. The plane is not left yet. It's leaving in the next 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I mean, everything went perfectly according to plan. Cheetahs were all fine. I think, it was really exciting for everyone, even in Namibia, to be involved in something of this nature.
What are they being, and they're being kept in those cardboard, how are they being in those boxes? 8 of them?
They are in those boxes, but it's not just a normal box. There is a lot of different layers for ventilation, and it's also to protect them for not getting aggressive. If they see a lot of humans or people, they might get aggressive. So this calms them. So it's really it's the international way to take care of animals, to transport them.
And how many people are accompanying them?
I think there's a whole convoy of about 10-15 people, including our High Commissioner from Namibia, Indian High Commissioner Mr. Prashant Agarwal is joining them. There are Indian vets, there are Namibian vets, there are people from the Cheetah Conservation. Everybody's sitting right next to the cheetahs to make sure that they're taken care of every few minutes.
Excellent news coming in. They're all clear for the cheetahs to go on that plane. Of course, remember, there's still a debate whether this is the right way to do it. But for now, all systems go for the cheetah to return. Thanks very much, Naveen, for joining us there from Windhoek. Let's then turn to that story, because it's 70 years after the cheetah was declared extinct, 1952, in the subcontinent. India all set in its 75th year of independence to welcome the cheetahs back. The special charter flight carrying the fastest animals on land lands in Gwalior on Saturday, which is the Prime Minister's birthday. Let's take a look at what is, as I said, a unique translocation intercontinental of the world's fastest animal.
The countdown has begun. Cheetahs are set to make a grand entry into India. 70 years after they were declared extinct in the subcontinent. 3 male and 5 female adult African cheetahs are taking an 11-hour transcontinental flight from Namibia to India. The special charter flight carrying the fastest animals on land will land in Gwalior on Saturday. From Gwalior, they will be taken to the Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh in a helicopter. The cheetahs who board the plane on an empty stomach will remain hungry throughout the duration of the journey till they reach the national park. They will be released into specifically built enclosures by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday, which also happens to be his birthday. The cheetahs will be kept in these enclosures for a month before being moved into a wider area and ultimately into the wild. The Haryana tribe, who are inhabitants of villages in Kuno, are creating awareness about these wild cats.
बने हुआ द्वारा डीएफओ द्वारा को नियुक्त किया गया था अपने लिए कि आप चीते जो आ रहे हैं उनकी रखवाली आप करोगे, तो हमने ये संकल्प लिया, बोला कि हम जी जान से प्रतिज्ञा करते हैं कि हम चीतों की पूर्ण रूप से रखवाली करेंगे.
The African Cheetah Introduction Project in India was conceived in 2009 under the UPA, but picked up speed in the last few years. The Madhya Pradesh government says all preparations are done to welcome the cheetahs.
जिस दिन उन्होंने जन्म लिया उस दिन वे मध्य प्रदेश की धरती पर होंगे. इससे बड़ा सौभाग्य और मध्य प्रदेश का क्या होगा. और उस दिन को भी ऐतिहासिक सौगात दे रहे हैं.
The last sighting of cheetah in India was in 1947, when the Maharaja of a small kingdom in Chhattisgarh was photographed with 3 cheetahs he had hunted down. The cheetah was declared extinct in India in 1952. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's raise the big question then. Has history, or is history being made, or is this a big blunder? Will the cheetahs be able to survive in Kuno? Will cheetahs adapt to a new home? That's the big questions that are being raised across the wildlife world. I can tell you, joining me now, Divya Bhanush Singh, member Cheetah Task Force, and someone who was a driving force behind this project, Dr. Mahesh Rangarajan, environmental historian at Ashoka University, and someone who's the country's leading environmental historian. Appreciate both of you joining us. I'm also going to first, though, go to Valmik Thapar, naturalist and conservationist, who I spoke to earlier, because Valmik is one of the few opposed to this whole project. Valmik Thapar, you seem to be the biggest critic of this project to bring the African cheetah to India. What is it about this project that you're so strongly objecting to, the mission of translocation? Remember, Valmik is writing a book on the cheetahs of East Serengeti, and he's done more than 40 books, an author, member of various wildlife task force, Project Tiger, among others. Valmik Thapar, why are you objecting so strongly to the mission of the translocation of the cheetah?
I'm not objecting to the translocation of any animal. If we want to bring African animals to India, We are very welcome to it. We have never had African cheetahs in India's history. In the last 300 years, there is no natural record of a cheetah family in the wild. So why are we suddenly bringing an exotic species to India? Tomorrow, Odisha can ask for African lions. Somebody else will ask for a zebra. Another person for a giraffe. We are opening a can of worms, and there is no logic. I have not understood why the union government has been advised in this manner. It's wrong advice. Why do we need to get African cheetahs to Kuno Palpur? That's my question to anyone who wants to answer it.
But what is your biggest fear, Valmik Thapar? Is it about the cheetah survival here? Where do you fear? What could go wrong given that so much of effort has gone into planning this project over a decade now?
If you take Kuno Palpur as an area, it's an area which is a home for the Indian leopard, the occasional tiger, and lots of hyenas. All these three, leopards, tigers, and hyenas, are enemies of cheetahs. If you prepare this landscape, 6,400 square kilometers, resettle the villages, what is going to happen? The leopard population will climb to 400 leopards. The hyenas will be in their hundreds, and both these animals will tear apart any cheetahs that you introduce. And you're planning 35 to 50 cheetahs in the next 5 to 10 years. The cheetah has no hope in this. It's impossible, the equation. Also, African cheetahs live on Thompson's gazelles. They live on small antelope in Africa. We have not prepared or rehabilitated black buck herds. We have not rehabilitated Indian chinkara or four-horned antelopes. So what are the cheetahs going to run after? I don't suppose it's going to be spotted deer and sambar deer in the forest. So we have an area with lots of problems by introducing an exotic species. Our indigenous species will suffer tremendously at the cost of introducing an exotic species. So I am very, very wary of it. But if this is what our wildlife scientists and advisors to the government have persuaded the government to do, then we will all watch it. It'll be the challenge of a lifetime, because forest officers will be spending 24 hours chasing these animals to ensure their survival. And there's a big question mark to their survival, because I have looked at these cheetahs every year in the eastern Serengeti.
You know, the experts though behind the project say that the leopards have been removed. The cheetahs are being brought into the area as prey for cheetahs. You seem to be suggesting that all these efforts won't work, that this is not sustainable. Am I correct that you, even before your first reaction is it's not sustainable?
It's not true. The leopards jumped into the cheetahs' small enclosures where cheetahs will be housed before they are released. Those leopards have been moved out. There will be at least 60 to 70 leopards in the wild of Kuno Palpur, and they will be interacting with cheetahs. This is not the correct way to look at this. When finally the cheetah is released into the forests, they will have to deal with their number one enemy, which are leopards. And just like you want cheetah population to go up, so will the leopard population go up. And what are they all going to feed on? Where is the breeding farms for the prey? How are you going to import Thompson's gazelle? Are you going to import Grant's gazelle? What are you going to do with the food for these cheetahs?
But you know, this has been a mission long in the making. Conceived when the UPA 1 was in power. Jairam Ramesh was environment minister, went to South Africa, I think 2009, and supported now by the Modi government, by wildlife experts across the world. Surely all of them can't be wrong.
My opinion, as a wildlifer who spent 47 years working with big cats, I am saying that this mission to bring cheetahs has no logic, should not have been undertaken. If people want to take on this challenge, they are very welcome. I have no great objection, but it makes no sense to me at all. Both the governments have been advised by different people. The first decision of the government, which was the Congress government, was not to bring cheetahs. Then Shri Jairam Ramesh changed that and supported bringing in cheetahs. That's his problem. He has to understand wildlife much more than he does. My understanding of wildlife, and as a friend of wildlife, This is not in the interest of Indian wildlife or in the interest of African cheetahs. That's my opinion.
Is there an alternative plan, though, that you would have suggested? Any other plan that could have brought the cheetah here, which went extinct in 1950s? I know you're saying that it never, that the cheetah in its present form never is not indigenous, but do you have a better plan?
I have no alternatives for the cheetahs. If we had any cheetahs in the past and all the promoters of this plan said that there were Asiatic cheetahs, there are only 15 to 20 Asiatic cheetahs left in the world in Iran, and they can never come here. So I do not want to set a precedence in this country. I am not in favor of that, to bring African cheetahs here, because tomorrow there will be a demand from different state governments of bringing other African animals. And why should we not look after our animals first? We have snow leopards, we have endangered species of birds, we have smaller mammals. They all require money and care. We do not require multi-million-dollar projects which have no sense. They have no logic, because we never had African cheetahs in this country.
A concern, of course, is the conflict with humans. Would you cite that to justify your stand that we do have villages coexisting in such reserves, unlike in the Serengeti, where you have miles and miles of savanna with no human habitation?
It will be a big concern, because in the larger landscape of 6,400 square kilometers, there are nearly 150 villages, and human beings will have to be resettled. The livestock population will be under threat. There will have to be a huge amount of effort to reduce and minimize the man-animal conflict. And we are adding another huge problem to our forest department, which is already overstretched and dealing with multitudes of problems.
Would you, though, support translocating, let's say, the Asiatic lions from Gir to Kuno, which was the original plan, move them, because there are lots of them in Sasan Gir in Gujarat, move them to Madhya Pradesh, that was shelved due to strong opposition from the Gujarat government? Would you have supported that?
I support a small population of Asiatic lions in Kuno Palpur, because the second population of lions is important so that no disease can wipe out the first population. Also, lions in Kuno Palpur will not be attacked by leopards or hyenas, whereas cheetahs will be attacked by leopards and hyenas. So they're two different things. It's how you look at big cats. I do not know how governments have rationalized a home that was meant for the Asiatic lion to suddenly become the home of the African cheetah. Please, someone explain to me, because in my brain, I do not understand it.
Those are very, very strong.
And don't forget village dogs. We have to get rid of all the village dogs, because village dogs as a pack can tear the cheetah apart.
My final question, what you seem to be suggesting, conserve animals first that India is home to, don't bring species from other parts of the world. Am I correct?
My view is that we should look after our indigenous species, and when we have to restock them, we must find a way to do that with our indigenous species. We do not need to introduce African cheetahs, and all the promoters of the present plan have never advocated African cheetahs. They're now saying there is no difference between the African cheetah and the Asiatic cheetah because the DNA is very close. But they never said this before. So we are great at making rationales, misadvising governments to doing things which are highly complex. This is a highly complex project to undertake, considering all the problems we already face in the field.
Okay, so you've heard the criticism there from Valmik Thapar, who I spoke to earlier. Let's get in the voices of those who believe this project is a positive step forward. Divya, Baru Singh, as a member of the Cheetah Task Force, listening to Valmik Thapar address all his concerns, that this is not the way to translocate an animal like the cheetah into Kuno, which he believes is a space where the cheetah will compete with leopards, possibly with tigers from neighboring Ranthambore. It isn't the best space to be in.
All right, Rajdeep, thank you very much. Before I come to Valmik Thapar, there is an echo.
Yeah, go ahead.
In my sound. Okay. First, a small correction. The last reports of cheetahs in India was in 1967 from the same location where the 3 cheetahs were shot. One, and there was one from Hazaribagh even later. And if you look at the Indian subcontinent, the last reports of cheetahs in the Indian subcontinent were from the Chagi Plains in Balochistan in 1997, where one was shot, 1 cheetah and 2 cubs were sighted, and 1 cheetah skin came for sale in Islamabad. Having said that, I'll come to Valmik. The issue is this, that the difference between African and Indian or Asiatic cheetahs is very, very minor, as the DNA tells you today. One. Point number 2, cheetahs in Africa, wherever they are used to living with leopards and hyenas. One specific point, hyenas, the spotted hyenas in Africa are in packs, whereas the striped hyena is not in packs in India. Of course there are leopards. Of course there is a possibility of some kind of a interaction between leopards and cheetahs. But then that's what they face back home. Coming back to calling them African cheetahs, I really don't know. You see, between 1918 and 1947 or 50, 200 cheetahs were imported from Africa. They came after a 15 days journey without tranquilizers, without antibiotics. And they were treated by our Indian people as if they were Indian cheetahs. And they were treated when they fell ill with Indian medicines, not Western medicines. And so what are we talking about African cheetahs? There is no such specific, I mean, there is, the distinction between African cheetahs and Asian cheetahs is so minimal that we are not bringing an animal which is entirely different. Valmik talks of bringing in zebras and God knows what else. But zebras never existed in India. Cheetahs did. And they, by God, they did until 1997 in the Indian subcontinent. I see no problem whatsoever. Look, if we do not take a risk, you cannot progress. Mm-hmm. If the Americans hadn't decided to go to the moon, we would have never gone to it, and we lost astronauts. So what? Let's go ahead with it. Also, it's not a zero-sum game that if cheetahs come, then all other Indian animals are not going to be protected. That's ridiculous. Also, cheetahs,
but what's the big benefit? What's the big positive?
Is the cause of protection. I'll tell you, the big benefit is this. I'll tell you, the big benefit is that if a mega animal which becomes a flagship animal, you are going to be able to protect a hell of a lot of grasslands, scrub jungles, which the government has so far, since last 70 years, paid very scant attention to. Our entire effort has been forest related. Kuno Palpur is a forest, of course. But do you know, Rajdeep, that as late as 1920, the Shikar Khana in charge of Gwalior state said that there are 50 cheetahs in this area. So what are we talking about? Let's look at history properly. Let's do our homework before we make this kind of statements. You know, I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry that this kind of a strident attitude is displaying itself here.
I'm trying to get in as many views. Mahesh Rangarajan, you are a historian. As Divya Bhanu Singh ji mentioned, the cheetah, according to him, clearly existed for several decades in India, and there is very little difference between an African and an Indian cheetah. But have cheetahs been reintroduced in any other part of the world, or are we seeing something unique? And therefore, there is a sense that will this go right or wrong, Mahesh?
So there have been since 65 to 67 reintroductions in Southern Africa. Most of these are in South Africa. 5 are in neighboring countries such as Malawi and Zambia. But I do want to emphasize I have the greatest respect for Mr. Thapar, both as scholar and as someone who's done so much for the tiger and other fauna. I would, however, submit that the historical record in the cheetah in the colonial period is very clear. Besides hunting records, animals were killed for bounties. And there are very clear evidence of cheetah being killed as far south as Tirunelveli, which, by the way, is the southern range of the black buck, major prey animal in open areas. And very important, there are records also in Satyamangalam forest, Coimbatore. And the cheetah habitats in India in the late 19th century, as written by people like Baldwin, consisted of 3 kinds of areas: the open tree-dotted savanna with black buck, ravines and broken country, as well as scrub jungle. So, we must remember in late 19th century, density of population in India was 80 to a square kilometer. In 1600, it was 35. It's a very different landscape. And any conservation will be a challenge. Today, most of the country is cultivated. The forest and uncultivated area is smaller. The prey base is smaller. But there is very little doubt that the cheetah had a very important presence in the subcontinent. And This hunting was very significant, but so was the role of administration. They were very happy that they were eliminating the cheetah because the British wanted to kill off almost all carnivores. Some princes also played a role by trapping cheetahs and using them in captivity for hunting.
You know, there will be those, though, Divya Bhanu Singh, who will say that this is a distraction from what was the original plan. The original plan was to have a second home for the Gir lion, that moved the Gir lion from Sasan Gir to, in a way, to another state, have another habitat. Now in Kuno, you have the cheetah coming in from Africa, rather than translocating your own lion from Gir to Madhya Pradesh. How do you respond to that? That this is a multi-million-dollar exercise when something far cheaper and more effective could have happened.
All right. All right, I'll come to that. But just one, give me few seconds to go back to the cheetah.
Yes.
The cheetahs have been recorded in Indian history and prehistory for last 2000 years, all right? Firoz Shah Tughlaq had so many cheetahs in Caracal in his menagerie that it was difficult to count. Emperor Akbar had 1,000 cheetahs at one time, and 9,000 cheetahs he collected in his reign of 49 years. Are you suggesting, or is anyone suggesting, that cheetahs were not indigenous to India? I mean, what are we talking about? Anyway, that said, let me go about the lion business. The government of Gujarat, Shankar Singh Waghela, the then chief minister, in 1993 said that I will not allow a lion, leave alone a lion, but I will not allow even a lion cub to go out of Gujarat. There were no cheetah reintroduction plans there. If the lions haven't gone there, it was not because the cheetahs have come in. Oh, let's be real, for Christ's sake. This is ridiculous. The lions have not gone to Kuno Palpur in spite of a Supreme Court order. And don't tell me it's because the cheetahs have gone there. I mean, these are two separate things. Yes, because your entire Asiatic lion population is in one geographical area, it is prone to all kinds of natural calamities, Stomoxis caltricans, also to canine distemper, and God knows what else. So there should be a second home, but this has got nothing to do with the coming of the cheetahs.
But
1993, who was talking about
but Divya Bhanu Singh, you have no issues with the costs involved in such a large project?
No, but look, Rajdeep, if we are going to reintroduce a species which has gone extinct in our country, there is going to be a cost. And that cost is worth it because it will become a mega species, a flagship species, and if its habitat is protected, then your wolf, your caracal, and all other minor carnivores and herbivores of the grasslands will be protected. Just as the Project Tiger now, which has been around for since 1972, has protected an entire environment. And let's face it, Project Tiger took so many years to come about. That was not the reason not to start it. So, okay, fine, give this guy a chance. Let's get on with it.
That's
20 years down the line, we may be all in.
You're saying judge this project not today, judge it 20 years down the line. Mahesh Rangarajan, from your experience of looking at the way conservation, way conservation projects have taken off, Project Tiger extremely successful. Your sense, should we be positive, therefore, of the cheetah coming home in a way, given the fact, as just was revealed to me by Divya Bhanu Singh, that Emperor Akbar had 1,000 cheetahs with him? Is this something we should see positively, and over the next 20 years, possibly cheetah conservation becoming, like tiger conservation, a badge of honor for India?
No, one thing I do want to emphasize that the situation in India or any developing country will never be ideal. When Project Tiger underwent a midterm review in the mid-70s, Dr. Lehausen, very senior scholar of cats, said that the tiger reserves ideally should be 3,000 square kilometers with 300 tigers. There's probably only one habitat, the Bandipur Nagarhole complex, which has 500 to 600 tigers. The situation will never be ideal. The other point is, this is a very important project. You use the word transcontinental relocation. Look at the countries, Namibia, South Africa, and India stood by them in the struggle against apartheid. This is a very unusual project. Project Tiger was supported by WWF, large international body. $1 million was raised mostly by European royals and others. This is a project done by 3 developing countries together. Whether it will succeed or fail is a question biologists have to answer, and all these concerns are genuine ones. How does a large carnivore adapt to a new environment? Will it be able to hunt? How will it coexist with other carnivores? But we should remember that cheetahs historically shared range with these very animals, the lion, the leopard, the hyena. Similarly, in the past, in the grassland areas, it would have shared habitat with the wolf. And if we are serious about looking at these habitats, then one should keep in mind that the focus in the 70s was on tigers and forests. Well done. But the shadow of tiger and shadow of forest should lift. We must look at different kinds of environments. Hopefully, this will be a signal to look at deserts, semi-arid landscapes, the endangered great Indian bustard, very important Jordan's cursor. So, a new view of the land where the living beings are part of the land. Conservation isn't about the animals alone. It's a notion of heritage which includes the animals and birds as part of what India is to be. So it's very ambitious, and there are very serious human challenges. They are very critical ones. I'm not sure all villagers in the larger landscape need to be moved out. Can these animals fan out into larger areas where we try and minimize conflict?
Correct.
So the jury is out on the future, but it's a very, very significant effort that one can say to renature the central Indian ecological landscape.
Well, all I'll say, it's extremely exciting in a way. For someone who's tracked wildlife purely as an enthusiast, to see this picture, India Today's cover story, the cheetah being garlanded and welcome home, we can only hope that the cheetah will be part of India's landscape in the years ahead, with all the various caveats put in by the likes of Valmik Thapar, the concerns that also need to be registered. But I appreciate top experts joining me on the show today to give our viewers a sense as to why this is an important moment, you believe, in India's wildlife conservation process. Thank you all very much. Mahesh Rangarajan, Divya Bhanu Singh, for also joining me here on the news today. The cheetah is here now. The cheetah is going to be welcomed by the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister today was in Uzbekistan, remember, in Samarkand, attending the Shanghai Cooperation Summit there. The Prime Minister held bilateral meetings, importantly, with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, also the Turkish President Erdogan, the Uzbek President, but stayed away from meeting the Chinese or the Pakistanis. That meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin was the one that was the highlight. And there the Prime Minister said to the Russian President that today is not an era of war, and the focus should be on addressing food, fertilizer and fuel security concerns. All of this, of course, coming on the backdrop of Russia's invasion of Ukraine earlier this year. Listen in.
आज का युग युद्ध का है नहीं, और हमने फोन पर भी कई बार आपसे इस विषय में बात की है कि डेमोक्रेसी और डिप्लोमेसी और डायलॉग, ये सारी बातें ऐसी हैं कि जो दुनिया को एक स्पर्श करती हैं। आने वाले दिनों में शांति के रास्ते पर हम कैसे बढ़ सके, उसके विषय में जरूर आज हमें चर्चा करने का मौका मिलेगा। आपका व्यू पॉइंट समझने का मुझे भी एक अवसर मिलेगा।
I know about your position on the conflict in Ukraine, and I know about your concerns. I know that you share these concerns, and we want all of this to end as soon as possible. But the other party, the leadership of Ukraine, has claimed that they refuse to engage in negotiating process. They said that they want to achieve their objectives, as they say, on the battlefield militarily. We will keep you abreast of everything that is happening over there.
Well, Rajdeep, the statements are very, very significant, but also India-Russia ties quite nuanced. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has very specifically spoken about the relationship, the old ties, 22 years of relationship just between him and President Putin. He was chief minister when President Putin took over as head of state. So that shows the kind of relationship the two countries have. Now, when it comes to Prime Minister Modi conveying concerns with regards to war, President Putin said that he understands the concerns and he wants to put an end to it, but he's put the ball in Ukraine's court. Now, it is for Ukraine to see how they are going to look at ending the war with Russia. So the messaging over here is not just about Russia or what Modi said to the Russian president, but also about the fact that Modi could raise this concern and raise it publicly, now he can go back to America, to Blinken, to Biden and say, well, we raised the concerns. I mentioned war, said that there needs to be an end. This is not an era of war. And it is now for Russia to do what it has to do in terms of putting an end to the war. So nuanced relationship where both countries are allowing space to each other to be able to withstand the pressures that come from the West. On the Russian side, Russia again saying that they understand the concerns and the fact that these are historic ties, it cannot be diminished or impacted by any pressure from any part of the world.
Geeta Mohan there reporting from Samarkand. Let me go straight across to Vishnu Prakash, former spokesperson, MEA, former ambassador. Skand Tayal, also former ambassador. Appreciate both of you joining us on the show. Vishnu Prakash ji, how do you see the fact that the Prime Minister told the Russian President that this is not an era of war? Is that enough of a signal to suggest that India strongly disapproves of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or are we still maintaining a delicate balancing act given our special relationship with Moscow?
Rajdeep, good evening.
Good evening.
Those who wanted to listen or chose not to listen will not listen.
Mm-hmm.
India has not been neutral, period. What India has done is to speak in India's language. I will elaborate. Now, the significant thing, as you have mentioned and Geeta was mentioning, is that Prime Minister very clearly said that this was not the era of war, and Putin was receptive. That's the big difference. For the simple reason that unlike the West, India did not go in for a shrill denunciation, did not issue threats, did not use reprimand, did not use sanctions. West has only one prescription for every element, sanctions, a reprimand. Now that gets the tails up. Have ever sanctions been effective? India from day one has been saying sovereignty should be respected, territorial integrity should be respected, get back to the negotiating table and solve this problem. Now, there is no other solution. But just because we refuse to take dictation and because we do not speak the language that the West wants us to speak, they say that it's neutrality. Now, there is a very big difference, but it is the way we put across things. And today, Prime Minister made it very clear that in the past also he has been speaking to President Putin about bringing about peace, about respecting territorial integrity, and so on. So it is about time that the Western world understands that there is another way of doing things. There need not be just one way. I do not believe that they will listen to that because they have their own way of doing things. But we are today in a position to stand up to our national interests, look people in the eye and say that, well, this is how we will conduct business. Rajdeep.
Mr. Tayal, you agree with that? That have we been able to emphasize our neutrality in this conflict? Or do you believe that at the end of the day, with the Russians, their self-interest, their perception of national interest will lie in continuing with this war in Ukraine, despite the recent reverses? Really no sign that Putin is willing to back off.
On India's stand, I agree completely with Ambassador Vishnu Prakash that India's stance has been very principled. It has not been shrill to condemn Russia. But you look at the vote in Security Council, we did not vote against Russia, but in our explanation of vote, we stood by the principle of sovereignty, territorial integrity, UN Charter, and universal rules. But the second part of your question is that unfortunately in the West, there are no strong voices of moderation. Prime Minister, in his remarks, which were open to the media, said that today we will get an opportunity to talk about how can we progress on the path of peace. And President Putin said that Ukraine is not coming to negotiate, they want to win the war. And who is advising Ukraine? America and the West are prodding Ukraine not to go for negotiations.
No, but it's a war. Wait, Mr. Tyal, just to stop you there, but the war is started by the Russians. I mean, let's be very clear. It's Russia's aggression on Ukraine. I mean, we can question Western double standards when it comes to aggression on sovereign nations, but in this instance, Russia has committed the act of aggression. So, should India have come out even more strongly against Mr. Putin, or you believe because of our interests, economic interests in promoting a stronger relationship with Moscow, we can't go beyond a certain line?
I believe that India's strong condemnation of Russia on this aggression would not have made any difference to Russia, because the whole world, so many countries have been saying so many things about Russia, but it would have spoiled a relationship between India and Russia built over decades, to which Prime Minister also referred. So we have to stand by principles of international law, sovereignty, etc. But India also has to look after its own national interest. I believe that our entire policy towards Ukraine conflict has been very well crafted, safeguarding the principles, standing by the principles of international law, sovereignty, etc. And also trying to find a way out. What is the way out? Way out is only diplomacy and dialogue. That is what Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Jaishankar are emphasizing.
Okay,
the parties, the antagonists have to talk. If they don't talk, then countries like India, which are friendly towards both sides, should try to bridge the gap. But unfortunately, in the Western side, I think we are missing a sane voice like of Angela Merkel, who was a strong voice and who understood the security concerns of Russia also.
So can I just bring in Vishnu Prakash there on that? Do you believe that India has an influence at all in reaching out to both sides? Is that possible at all?
I don't know whether we have an influence or we do not have an influence. These decisions will be taken by Russia and not Ukraine, but Washington. The fight is not between Russia and Ukraine. The fight is between Washington and Moscow. So that decisions they will be taking. But point really, Rajdeep, is that does shrillness or loud denunciation deliver? Just strong language deliver? If strong language were to deliver, then North Korea would have been the world's leader. Point is that if you can put across a viewpoint in a way that the other person does not feel offended, why not? Now,
but what is the principle? Ambassador Prakash, let me press you. What principle have we held on to by saying this is not an era of war, but at the same time refusing to condemn what most of the world believes is outright aggression by the Russians?
Rajdeep, when we say, what we have to understand is that you do not have to be abusive. When you say that territorial integrity should be respected, what does it mean? There are two ways of telling a person. You tell a person that you're bad, or tell a person that you can improve. Now, you can say that, well, you did not tell a person that you're bad, but you did say you can improve. So who will a person listen to? You outrightly denounce a person, or you give him an opportunity to improve. I agree with you that Russia started the conflict. I also agree with you that that cannot be condoned. It's also a fact that Russia hitherto was not open to a negotiated settlement. So when Putin says that the ball is in the Ukrainian court, that is neither here nor there.
Okay.
But all that one is saying is that India has been unfairly criticized for being neutral. No, India was not neutral. India was independent and India was principled, and we said what we said in our own way. And I think that is the right thing, and that is something that we will continue to do.
That's an interesting way to put it, that we've not been neutral, but we've been independent. We've been principled, you believe, without being shrill. Hopefully, some of those messages that went out to Vladimir Putin from Prime Minister Modi, that this is not an era of war, will resonate in Moscow. I appreciate Vishnu Prakash and Mr. Tyal for joining me here on the News Today tonight. Let's turn from there, since we are dealing with Russia and Ukraine, to the plight of the Indian medical students who, remember, were evacuated from Ukraine at the start of the year when the conflict began. Well, today they are facing an entirely new set of challenges, a future filled with uncertainty. The students who are hoping that the government would help them to complete their education. But the government has made it very clear before the Supreme Court that's hearing the matter that they can't be accommodated in Indian medical schools. So what happens to the students who are stuck in this conflict? Take a look.
February 24th, 2022. Russian troops breached Ukraine border, triggering the biggest geopolitical crisis in 21st century Europe. Caught in the crossfire were hundreds of Indian medical students. Their parents had taken loans and dug into savings to raise their kids' dreams of becoming doctors. As the fighting became fierce, Indian students were evacuated to safety with the help of Ukrainian and Russian authorities. Back home, they face uncertain future. The government has informed the Supreme Court that it cannot accommodate students evacuated from Ukraine in Indian colleges. The government has said any such admission would be unfair to students who scored better in NEET exams to enter Indian medical colleges. It is, however, allowed completion of medical studies under its academic mobility program.
अब एकेडमिक मोबिलिटी ये जिस भी कंट्रीज़ में दे रहे हैं, जो भी यूरोपियन कंट्री दे रहे हैं, वहाँ की क्वालिटी, वहाँ पर ये इस क्वालिटी की एजुकेशन जो ये सोच रहे हैं, वहाँ कैसे पॉसिबल है? वहाँ पर भी लैंग्वेज का इशू आएगा, कॉस्ट का इशू आएगा. एटलीस्ट इंडिया में देते हैं तो हम ये सोच सकते हैं कि बच्चा हमारा सेफ़ है. हमारे को कॉस्ट जो भी एक्स्ट्रा बेयर करना पड़ेगा वो हम कर पाएंगे, क्योंकि अभी हमारे पास में कोई ऑप्शन इस टाइम है नहीं.
The students are distraught.
जैसे हमें मोदी जी इतनी दूर से लेके आए हैं, तो हमें एक होप ये भी थी अगर हमें इस सारी सिचुएशन से अगर वो बाहर लेके आए हैं तो हमारे इंडिया में भी एडमिशन कराने का हमें इंडिया में अकोमोडेट कराएंगे. अगर मोबिलिटी प्रोग्राम इंडिया में वैलिड हो जाता तो हम अपनी पेरेंट यूनिवर्सिटी से कहते कि वी कैन स्टडी इन इंडिया, यू कैन प्रोवाइड अस द टीचर्स एंड वी स्टडी इन इंडिया ओनली एंड इट विल बी मोर सेफर देन एनी अनदर यूरोपियन कंट्री.
The last option we have to go to Ukraine or to take transfer, but we don't want transfer because this gave 20 countries like UK, USA, how we can go there for the mobility program? If the fee is there $20,000, $30,000, how can we pay the fee?
The Supreme Court has suggested that the centre should create a portal to assist Ukraine-returned medical students in admissions to foreign colleges.
The centre making it clear that no special arrangements can be made for the students who return to India from Ukraine, except for the ones who are in their final year or the clinical year of residency. However, a slight ray of hope for the remaining students as the court asks the government to create at least a web portal so that these students can get some information and some help about the foreign countries and universities that could potentially give them admissions and help them sort out their future. The matter will now be heard next week. In New Delhi, this is Anisha Mathur for India Today.
Let's take a break at this point. When we return, we'll turn to our good news today story. It comes from Yamuna Nagar in Haryana and also our Get Real India special. You're watching the news today. News without the noise.
Hey, I noticed something new. You've started using a new body lotion. Funny.
I'm so sorry for the delay. I was on another call. It just kept going on.
No, Papa. You have been a steam bath. Steam bath? At home? 2 steam bath he takes.
Go to your homework.
It's 7:20 already. The kickoff's in 5 minutes. Get all the boys. We have the entire place to ourselves, man. Not working?
Of course it is. But I don't want you guys to be using this bathroom. So use the other one.
7:20 already. The kickoff's in 5 minutes. Get all the boys. We have the entire place to ourselves, man. Not working?
Of course it is. But I don't want you guys to be using this bathroom. So use the other one.
Welcome back. Let's turn to tonight's Get Real India story, and it comes from Punjab, where the drug menace continues to disrupt lives. Governments after governments have promised to get a grip on the situation, but all those promises have fallen flat over the years so far. There's a new government in place. Remember, a few months ago, the Aam Aadmi Party was elected, and one of the promises it had made was to contain the drug menace. On the ground, though, there are serious issues. It's our Get Real India story.
Generations lost to drugs. This viral video is a grim reminder of a problem successive governments have chosen to brush under the carpet. Punjab is still high on drugs. This video was shot in Maqbulpura, Amritsar, an area now notorious for easy availability of drugs. In their 20s, these victims of drug abuse opened up to India Today.
आराम ना मिल जाता नशा
हाँ जी कई वक्त बड़ी तंगी होंदी है सारी दिहाड़ी तोड़ना निकल जाती है ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਸਮਾਨ
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਪੈਸਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਇੰਤਜ਼ਾਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ
ਪੈਸਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ
ਇੱਕ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦੀ ਪੂੜੀ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ
250
ਤੇ ਦਿਹਾੜੀ 'ਚ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ
ਦੋ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਸ ਸਵੇਰੇ ਤੇ ਸ਼ਾਮ
ਤੇ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਨਾਲ
इधर उधर इकट्ठे कर लईदे पैसे हाँ जी
ਤੇ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਆਰਾਮ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਕਾਰਵਾਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੀ ਕੋਈ
नहीं
ਤੇ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਹੇਲੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ
हाँ जी ये मैंने उत्थे राह च मिली
ਕਿੰਨੀ ਦੇਰ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਕਰਦੇ
ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਗਾ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਵੱਖਰਾ ਗਈ ਹਾਂ
ਕਿ ਕਦੀ ਨਸ਼ੇ ਦੇ ਤਸਕਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੇਚਦੇ ਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਦੀ ਫੜਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਕੋ ਜਾਂ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਕਾਰਵਾਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੀ
ਆਈ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਨਾ ਮਕਬੂਲਪੁਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਤਾਂ ਸ਼ਹਿਰੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਲੈਣ ਚੇਚਾ ਹਾਂਜੀ
The police claim over 60 people from Maqbulpura have been booked for role in drugs trade. While all political parties acknowledge how grave the problem is, all they do is blame each other.
ਤਰਾਇਆ ਕਿ ਪਾਇਲਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਅਜੇ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਚੀਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਇਨੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਇਹੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਰਿਕਵਰੀ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੋਸ਼ੀ ਨੇ ਉਹ पकड़े जाएं।
इन्होंने भी आके बहुत शोर मचाया था गंदी राजनीति की थी इस इशू के ऊपर लेकिन आज सिचुएशन ये है कि आज ये वर्स्ट लेवल के ऊपर पंजाब में नशा गंजा पहुंच चुका है।
According to the National Crime Records Bureau, 9,972 cases were filed under the NDPS Act in 2021, the third highest in the country. Punjab's crime rate per 1 lakh population under NDPS is 32.8%, the highest in the country. The drug epidemic in Punjab is showing no signs of ending. With Manjeet Sehgal, Bureau Report, India Today.
Get Real Punjab, Get Real India. No silver bullets to resolve that issue. Okay, let's leave you tonight. It's Friday night with a nice positive story. A story of how people in a way contribute to others. A family in Haryana's Yamuna Nagar has been serving the homeless for the last 4 years. Jaskirat Singh has set up a shelter that he calls an ashram for the destitutes. There are many Indians out there doing some great work. That's why we like to showcase them every night in Good News Today. You stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubh Ratri, Jai Hind, Namaskar.
Meet Jaskirat Singh, a 33-year-old man who runs a shelter for homeless people.
Jaskirat's family has been selflessly serving the destitute in Haryana's Yamunanagar for 4 years now. The family arranges for food and medication for the needy.
शेल्टर होम घर से ही स्टार्ट किया. हमारे गांव में एक पर्सन था तो उसको लेके आए, उसको रेस्क्यू किया, उसको केयर करी. बस जैसे उसको रखा एक और पर्सन आ गया, हमने कहा चल तेरी भी सेवा कर देते हैं. उसको रखा, बस ऐसे बढ़ते बढ़ते हमारा ये शेल्टर होम सा बन गया. ये हमारी ही ज़मीन है, फिर यहाँ पर शुरू हो गया.
Currently, there are around 102 people staying in his shelter. Jaskirat's family also helps them meet their families. The separated inmates come from Haryana, Punjab, Bihar, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and even Kerala.
इसने हमेशा कहना मम्मा मैंने तो आश्रम खोलना है. तो इसको मैं तो बड़ा गुस्सा करती थी भी नहीं खोलना, भी बहुत बड़ी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. भाई एक जना जैसे हमारे आश्रम में आ गया घर पे तो उसको सारी उम्र जब तक उसकी डेथ नहीं होती तब तक हमारी ड्यूटी बन जाती है उसकी केयर करनी, जैसे अपने बुजुर्गों की हम घर पर करते हैं केयर. तो इसको टाली जा रही थी और इसने हमेशा मेरे को यही कहना कि मैंने तो सेवा करनी है, प्लीज़ मम्मा करने दो.
In the shelter, various constructive activities are conducted to keep the inmates engaged. The local administration is also pitching in by trying to trace their families. While the ashram doesn't receive any government aid, it gets a lot of support from common people in the area. With Lalit, Bureau Report, India Today.
It's 7:20 already. The kickoff's in 5 minutes. Get all the boys. We have the entire place to ourselves, man. Not working?
Of course it is. But I don't want you guys to be using this bathroom. So use the other one.